The Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello, this is the Chaser Report with Dom and Charles. Look, it's Dom here. Charles is sick today. I tried to organise someone else to chat to. I'm sorry, it's a little bit slack. We'll try and do better next week. If you want to complain, send us a funny complaint at podcast@chaser.com.au. What we thought we'd share with you today, though, is the episode after the submarine one that we did yesterday, where Charles was really quite unreasonably pleased with himself. And I think thought he was some kind of prophet or something. I don't know. Overconfidence comes easily to this man. Anyway, look, let's hope he's in good shape by next week, or at least as good a shape as Charles is ever in. And we'll catch you then. Thanks for bearing with us. Oh, and we've got to sort out that $700 trillion thing. If you still want to enter, podcast@chaser.com.au, send us an email. Speak soon. So, Charles, the submersible, the tragic and yet not entirely unforeseeable deaths that followed from this extremely unstable, it seems, carbon fibre vessel.
Yes. Well, this is what I want to talk to you about, which is the nature of carbon fibre.
Oh, yeah. I've used a carbon fibre, I think, for tennis rackets and other things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so one of the interesting yarns that Daniel Feldman actually did a couple of days ago on Twitter was pointing out where carbon fibre in submarines comes from, like the original idea for using carbon fibre in submarines. So as you know, as we talked about on the last thing, one of the difficult things about building a submarine is that for every, 10 metres you go down, you double the pressure that's on the hull. It may have been
every one.
Was it 1 metre?
It's certainly, it increases at a incredibly horrible rate.
A logarithmic rate. So you're talking about absolutely massive pressure on a hull. And part of the problem is that you have this sort of collapsible thing. Like when it does finally break, it sort of collapses in on itself.
And you're done.
And one of the things that has always been pointed out about carbon fibre is that it is a brittle material. So it's always been seen that metal is a much better material to make a submersible out of, because instead of just like cracking and therefore imploding, catastrophically, metal at least gives you a bit of a warning system, which is that it sort of crumples.
Yeah, that's why they don't make cars out of carbon fibre, because they would shatter rather than crumpling. And in fact, modern cars are designed to actually impact and, fold in a bit so that it doesn't get to your body. Interesting point. Maybe they could have, accessed the dozens and dozens of years of car development in designing this submersible.
Well, the thing is, there are lots of incredible advantages to carbon fibre, though. And the key one is just sheer portability, right? So imagine if you have to do a submersible that has enough metal on it to, and we're talking like steel and stuff like that, to go down 4,000 metres. You're talking about a fucking heavy vehicle, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a vehicle that you can't even conventionally put on another boat. Like, you can't just...
Because it'll sink the boat.
Yes, it'll sink the boat.
It gives you a start, though, and you're submersing, to be fair.
Exactly. So you've then got to design hundreds of millions of dollars of other equipment just to cart it around the country, especially if it's a submersible, which by definition is not one that can just travel on its own.
No, that's right. It's important to note that it doesn't have much ability to sort of move around on its own.
Yes, that's right. So the guy who came up with the idea to make it out of carbon fibre was not, in fact, Stockton Rush. It was, in fact, Stephen Fawcett. Do you remember Steve Fawcett?
Oh, yes.
The sort of adventurer.
Another eccentric billionaire adventurer.
Millennial and Gen sort of Z and Gen Y might not remember him because he died about 13 years ago. But when we were growing up, he was a sort of Richard Branson-esque
Dick Smith
sort of guy who would go, oh, okay, I'm going to fly in a plane entirely around the globe, and I'm going to get in didn't he get in a hot air balloon one?
I did a lot of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, for a while there, he was the sort of go-to guy, and he did everything quite sensibly, right? But he came up with the idea in about 2007. He came up with the idea, why don't we make a submersible out of carbon fibre, because it'll be really light and easy, right? So he started development on this. He spent actually several years developing it up. And then, unfortunately, completely unrelated, he crashed his plane into the side of a mountain, stumbled out and actually walked about half a mile from the wreckage and then died.
Well, he was set a lot of records for flying planes, circumnavigating the globe and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and crashed his plane.
Anyway, so at that point, I think that was about 2012, the guy who picked that up and who then bought out that project was Richard Branson.
Oh, really?
And he said, okay, well, this is an interesting idea. Carbon fibre submersible. Let's see what we can do with it. And then they realised, and it was going to be called the Deep Flight Challenger.
Oh.
And it was a one-person sub with wings, made of lightweight carbon fibre. And his whole idea, because Fawcett just liked breaking records, his whole idea was...
Yeah, he set a lot of world records.
I'll do the quickest underwater run or something like that. But crucially...
I'll do the flimsiest vessel under the water.
No, but crucially, because Fawcett was not an idiot, right? Like, he actually valued safety. His whole design was based on that it would be a disposable sub, that you would only ever go once out in a carbon fibre thing, because the whole nature of carbon fibre and the whole point of this podcast is to let you know that the way carbon fibre works is it is strongest when it's new.
Oh, so reusing the same carbon fibre submersible, which they did.
It gets weaker and weaker with every use. I've heard several people say it's like, you know how, say you had something like a paperclip or something like that. You know how, like, when you bend it, first of all, you can sort of bend it back. But if you keep bending it quite a bit...
it gets brittle, it snaps.
It sort of just... eventually snaps, right? So, and it's a bit like that with carbon fibre. So, in actual fact, the safest time, like, it's ironic, but the safest time to go in, say, the Titanic or something, not the Titanic, in the Titan, like the Stockton Rush submersible, would have been on its first voyage, because it's the one that's least likely to have any carbon fibre damage.
Well, there was a term that was used in the analysis of the crash, which was quite chilling, which was delamination, which sounded like a very bad thing to happen to carbon fibre, basically coming apart. Have you heard what James Cameron had to say about the choice of carbon fibre material? Yeah. He said it was a horrible idea to use carbon fibre, that it's not at all sensible for vessels with external pressure. And he just chucked in. He's done a lot of interviews about this. He just sort of threw in here and there that in his untested submersible that he went in, he didn't take passengers. It was just him and his scientist. He didn't sell tickets. But also he went 3 times deeper or something, down to the Challenger Deep, and survived because he didn't use carbon fibre.
Yes.
So he called it a horror. Yeah, the critical failure of the whole thing was the carbon fibre. So and he was really worried about this because they used such a dumb material. And this is someone who thought the Titanic was a good idea for a movie. So, James Cameron's not right about everything.
But even worse, Avatar.
Oh, yeah. I'd imagine doing an Avatar and going, what I really need to do is 4 sequels, but filmed it all at once.
Imagine going, I'm going to do a movie called Avatar, but there's an even dumber idea out there, carbon fibre on submersibles.
I think the next Avatar is called The Way of Carbon Fibre. But can I just quote, he's just backing up what you're saying here. He said, this is with George Stephanopoulos, he said, they fail over time because each dive adds more and more microscopic damage.
Yes.
Why didn't they ask him?
No.
James Cameron knows this shit.
No, but the thing is, Dom, and this is the next point in the rave, Stockton Rush also knew that, right? And I would just counter that I don't think necessarily it's the worst fibre, the worst material to use if you're just going to do it once, because it is strong. And the point is there are lots of good qualities to it. Like, for example, if you build it out of metal, then you have to also work out how it's going to float back up to the top. If you build it out of carbon fibre, it is incredibly light. You can literally fly through the water if you're in a carbon fibre submersible. But yes, you're right. It has micro tears in the carbon fibre with every time you go down in it, right? So they knew this. And so what Stockton Rush did is he invented a thing called the acoustic real-time monitoring system. So during descent, the computer sends an acoustic ping to 20 sensors throughout the carbon fibre hull to detect weakness. Every second or so, right?
Amazing.
It's a real-time monitoring system, right? And Stockton Rush actually patented this for for the thing. The
I'm
idea
not
was,
sure that pattern's going to be worth much to his heirs, unfortunately.
the idea was the submarine would stop every hour or two. Sorry, they did it every hour. The idea was the submarine would stop every hour or two on its descent. The computer would measure the integrity of the hull. If it seemed like it was failing, the pilot would take it up to safer waters.
Every hour?
Now, note that none of Russia's engineers wanted to put their name on this invention. So it was Stockton Russia's own invention alone, right? So the point is that what happened was if you have a catastrophic failure in carbon fibre, so say, I don't know, what's another brittle? Say glass, right? Does glass, Dom, because glass is brittle,
yes,
right? When you break glass, does it just slightly break or does it completely break?
It completely, I think the term is catastrophic failure, isn't it? That was used for what happens.
So the point is that actually maybe the point is that they knew that it was going to fail. And some people have suggested that maybe even the straw that broke the camel's back could even have been them stopping down going, okay, well, let's send some pings through this hole.
Well, it might have exactly right. It's sort of just like stress testing it. Let's do an underwater stress test.
Crack!
Oh, God. But apparently James Cameron made his sub so that it could actually shrink. So they used shrinkable glass and all the things. So it knew, like, because the pressure is so great.
Yes.
I love that we're just talking about physics and ignoring the comedy simply because this is so fascinating. It's really how you design for that challenge. And his went, again, 3 times deeper. It's bizarre. What an amazing. So apparently all the bolts had to be able to move around in the Cameron one to avoid the brittleness. Again, there was a product out there that did this job before that OceanGate could have looked at if they weren't so ahead. Did Stockton Rush have a carbon fibre tennis racket or something and just go, oh, great material?
The Chaser Report. Less news, less often.
The other small detail, which I haven't verified because I didn't want to, the story was too good to verify either way, is that if you actually look at some of the photos from earlier missions on that thing, you can see that the computer monitors are actually screwed in to the hull. And there was a suggestion of, was it actually screwed into the carbon fibre? In which case...
Forget about it.
Forget about it. Forget about it. The other thing that I'll just, as a sort of coda to this story, is guess what happened to the Richard Branson version of the project that he'd bought from Steve Fawcett years earlier? Guess what happened to it?
Well, either it completely crumbled and failed or he turned it into the spacecraft.
No. What happened was that in 2014, Richard Branson decided to just write off the whole project because he thought it was stupidly dangerous and he'd done his risk assessment on it and went, there is no way to commercialise this because it's a fucking stupid idea.
But Charles Stockton Rush, it was very clear. I've seen him quoted. Safety considerations and testing slow down innovation.
Yes.
What you'd want to do is just speed it up. If they try and slow you down going, let's stress test this thing that's going to go under unimaginable pressure at the bottom of the ocean, you just say, fuck off, boffins, I'm doing it anyway. Don't slow me down with your rules. That was the kind of guy he was. He probably should have explained a little bit more clearly to the 3 people he sold tickets to, for instance. By the way, the other detail we didn't mention when we talked about this last week that I learned is that the British guy, the British adventurer, survived Jeff Bezos's Blue Horizon. He went up.
He went up.
Before he went down.
Yes.
And so he's clearly used to eccentric, billionaires doing outlandish vessels that were completely safe.
Yes.
Bezos's Blue Horizon was absolutely fine. It worked really well.
Yes.
Not so much this one.
Well, the thing is, the Stockton Rush was by no means a billionaire. He was worth $12 million, Dom. And some of the reports that have been coming out in the last week is that essentially his company couldn't quite sell enough tickets.
Yeah.
And that's why he kept on offering, seats to journalists and things like that. To
I suspect...
drum up business.
I suspect he's not worth as much as he was before this happened.
But in particular, there is a suggestion that actually he knew that the carbon fibre thing was getting weaker and weaker, but he didn't have enough money to build a second one. And so he kept flogging this one that he knew was past its
So this is a big problem because normally the whole model for this, Charles, is that the eccentric billionaires fund the thing and blow massive amounts of money chasing a stupid idea, as Branson did. It's not meant to be that you've got some sort of striver who doesn't have much money who sells tickets to the billionaires. They're meant to do the funding. The narrative is completely wrong.
if he can't afford to just do more iterations of it.
Yes. And just to add to that theory, there is actually one piece of evidence that Eugenie Lassingame came up with and reported on is that Stockton Rush actually bought the carbon fibre hull, like the sort of front bit,
At Bunnings.
from Boeing.
It wasn't far off, was I?
Yeah, I know.
I was imagining the guy going to Bunnings going, "Hi, have you got any submersible stuff?"
And it was from Boeing. It was a Spencer-built composite cylindrical hull.
Right.
But it was actually, but Boeing sold it off because it was derated in January 2020 because they hadn't used it enough and it was past its shelf life. So essentially, it was too old to use in a Boeing plane, which doesn't have to deal with any pressure at all. They sold it off.
Oh, right. So
and
it was seconds.
Yes, it was seconds.
Oh, goodness. So I'm just reading this here.
Seconds World.
Seconds World, yeah. The Deep Sea Challenger was made out of high-strength steel and titanium, but it also had a crew compartment inside it. So they had a shell, but then inside it a second, so that if the hull was breached, there'd be another thing to protect you. Whereas the Titan had some titanium, no separate crew compartment, and just went, carbon fibre, that's fine. So again, the Deep Sea Challenger already existed. This had already been solved.
Yes.
I also wonder whether when you paid $250,000 for your ticket and you got into the submersible and you saw the Logitech gaming controller, was that a little bit of a clue this was a bit of a Dodgy Brothers operation?
Well, there's a fine line between Dodgy Brothers and innovator, as shown by Elon Musk.
Yes.
And, who are we to say, who are we to judge, Dom? Who are we to judge? Us armchair critics.
I never went in a submersible.
Safely at one atmosphere.
Yeah.
What have we done with our lives, Dom?
You know what it is, Charles?
We've lived.
It's the desire to adventure, to push out the realm of human experience and do things that no one's ever done before.
That's what I don't understand about this whole thing.
Fuck that.
Why would you do that?
Like, I have no desire to go to the highest mountain. I've got no desire to do the fastest circumnavigation.
Sounds like a bore.
It just sounds incredibly tedious. Yeah. I mean, going to the bottom of the ocean, would you want to see the wreckage of the Titanic? I just have no interest in that.
Maybe that's why they had to have the Logitech controller to get people on this thing. We can do some gaming.
That's great. No, in all sincerity, if someone offered me a free ticket in a completely safe vessel to go and gawk at the wreck of the Titanic, on which a huge number of people died, and it's just sitting there with seaweed on it or something. Fuck that. Why would I bother? It's just boring.
Yeah. I mean, even the movie's boring. That only lasted 3 hours.
I've never seen the movie. I'm so uninterested in the Titanic that I refuse to watch the James Cameron movie. And I certainly haven't watched any of the stuff about his trip, although I'm actually now interested to see how a less stupid person goes about going to the bottom of the ocean.
Our gear is from Rode. We are part of the Iconoclast Network. Dom, I think we're becoming proper journalists.
I think we're becoming oceanographers. Look, I don't want to be too mean. I realise they paid the ultimate price for this, and I feel sorry for the 19-year-old kid who apparently, not
it was
the
a
young
bit
guy. He didn't want to go.
He was reticent. Yeah,
he's just like, well, Dad really wants me to go. Okay, fine. He's paying all this money.
Never. Moral of the tale: never try and impress your dad.
As a father, don't. No,
we don't want you to. Yeah.
I'm very.
That will most impress me if you don't.
I'm very fortunate not to have $250,000 to blow on a ticket to an experimental submersible that will kill both of us.
Yeah.